let's walk through this. There's 4 things you should focus on in the new year. Let me just draw the grid out. 4 things you should focus on in the new year. And again, if you do these 4 things, you're going to be very good at what you do when it comes to selling. The first one is obviously, can't get away from this one, is prospecting. Prospecting is how we acquire new clients. Now, granted, this is tough to do. It's not easy these days, right? Especially as we move into the new year, potential recession, it's going to happen. It's going to be tougher to get new business. But nonetheless, we have to figure out what's the best medium for us to acquire new clients. Now, whether it's cold call, cold email, inbound marketing, different strategies, content marketing, whatever it may be, find out what is your best combination. There's not just one or two. Every time you hear about cold calling is dead or this is dead, emails are dead, it's not. It's just a combination of things. And then we have to get better at them. For example, I often hear like, Victor, it's not worth sending people email. They're not reading them. Well, maybe it's because we don't have the right script, the right value proposition in that email. Victor, I heard it's not worth cold calling. Depends. How big is the deal? If it's a transactional sale, you could argue it's not worth it. But it's a big B2B sale, enterprise sale. Of course it's worth it because in the long run, if you get one deal out of 10, let's say, it's worth it. So again, figure out what your prospecting strategy is for this coming year. Stop listening to other people. Everybody has an opinion about what works and what doesn't work. You have to find out what works for you. Next, we talk about, this is one that a lot of people just undervalue, which is your ability to present, communicate value. Presenting is the delivery system. In other words, we've prospected, we got the customer in, so to speak. So whether it's a demo or live face-to-face conversation, how do we present? And most salespeople still have not figured out the art of presenting. They think it's about just throwing out information. Presenting it's a skill. It's really about guiding the customer, right, to a certain conclusion you want them to arrive at. So once we got the prospecting down, we got presenting down, the next one is, how do you position, this is a good one, how do you position value? This, if you ask me where most people struggle, it's right there. It's positioning the value. When you sound just like everybody else, people don't pay attention. But if you learn how to position value, in other words, learn how to position the value in such a way that the customer goes, never thought about that. I get that. Really, never looked at it that way. But also, by positioning value, you need to be able to position yourself as a subject matter expert. In other words, you got to know what you're talking about. You can't have surface level content. And again, when the client's asking tough questions, you can't answer them, which is why I always tell people, once you decide that you're going to sell a certain product or service, you have to go so deep into that product or service. I mean, so deep into it that people go, this person truly gets it. This person understands. Because when the client knows that you're a subject matter expert, you seem to be providing insight that they haven't thought about. Insight, information beyond the obvious. And it's impactful information. I never thought about it that way. That's when you know that you're reaching that level of mastery as being in terms of positioning value. And at the end, when you can let the customer know, transmit to the customer, I know what I'm talking about. Here's things you should understand. And last but not least, you look out for their best interests. That to me is the pinnacle of selling. The last one is always the toughest one, which is pricing. Now, here's the interesting thing. Pricing shouldn't be that hard. If you know how to prospect, qualify the right clients, you know how to present. In other words, you know how to deliver the content. You also know how to position the value. Then pricing should be almost easy, right? It should almost be like a nudge over the line just to get them to buy. But too often, because we don't position the value or we're talking to the right clients, what happens is we don't sell. Our close rate goes. Now, one last item. If we know how to prospect, present, position value, and also talk about pricing, there's one thing that encompasses all these. And that is, if I could put a big box around it, and that is persuasion. Now, when I use the word persuasion, I mean it's the ability to guide a customer through a thought process, to a decision-making process. If you think about it, why do customers hold back? Anxiety typically, right? A lot of anxiety, low certainty. Our job is to lower that anxiety and increase that certainty. If you can do that, then the customer's more likely to buy. But too often, we never give thought to persuasion. We think it's a bad word, like, oh, you're just trying to sell people something they don't want. No. Persuasion is about knowing, here's my customer's problems. Here are their issues. My job is to ask certain questions to guide their thought process so they can see how we can help them. Now really think about that, to see how we can help them. That's positioning value. Brent Adamson said something interesting. When you're looking at all this, right, how to talk to your customers, a lot of what holds the customer back is not so much your presentation skill, your persuasion skills, is the customer's low confidence in themselves to make a buying decision. Now think about it. That's kind of interesting, actually. It's the customer's low confidence in themselves to make a buying decision. Maybe in the past they've made a bad decision and now they don't trust themselves to make a new decision. They may want to make the decision, but they're worried that from a professional standpoint, it might impact them, right? In other words, other people in the organization are looking at them. Our job is to imbue, and I love that word, imbue the customer with the confidence to make a buying decision. Like really ruminate on that thought. It is our ability to what? Lift up their confidence so they can go ahead and make a buying decision. So again, I just wanted to get online here real quick just to kind of emphasize, these are the 4 things we should work on all year. And maybe just pick one. Maybe I should get for the first quarter, I just focus on prospecting, or maybe just the first month. Month number 2, let's work on the presentation skills. How do we use analogies? How do we use stories? How do we use examples, case studies to really impact the actual presentation, right? And when we look at positioning value, beyond return on investment, talk about, cost of avoidance, of not doing anything, cost of inaction, right? Talk about what will happen about market share. In other words, how are you going to lose market share if you don't take action, or how much market share can you get? If we know how to position the value, the storyline becomes very easy. And when we get to pricing, it's not going to be a big deal. Again, 10 to 15% of deals are lost on pricing. One could argue that. I'm not going to push back on that too hard. But in reality, the majority, let's call it the 80-20 rule, 80% of people are not making a buying decision based on pricing, or if not making a buying decision, they simply don't feel the certainty, and there's too much anxiety that we haven't lowered. And again, persuasion is all about how do you tell the story about your product in such a way that the customer gets it and says, that's how it can help me. If you can master that skill, you're going to be great at selling this coming year.